Babes in Spyland. How now, sad cow? Episode 5. What is it? T-Ruffle asked in a shrill voice. What's the matter? Amphibian Queen saw Bunny Nose making a circular motion in the air. Then she pointed ahead. Does that mean we're going through it? CB asked. Amphibian Queen nodded and spoke to T-Ruffle. Be ready for us. Before he could answer, or whine, she hung up. What kind of bad luck card had they drawn today? Amphibian Queen glared at the railroad tracks, willing them to be as smooth as butter. The arms began to lower, and Bunny Nose launched CB's truck across the tracks. He flinched as the suspension took a good bounce. The back bumper got through just before the arms came down. Hold on, CB said. They were about to take out a railroad crossing. Mud would not be happy. However, she'd told Amphibian Queen that if she had to dance with the smelly goat herders to make Social happy, she should dance with the smelly goat herders. Hopefully that extended to damaging public property. She made a mental note to call the city right away so they could come out and make repairs. Amphibian Queen looked both ways as they approached the intersection. The train was close, but not too close. They should have enough time. She just hoped that the massive front end of the truck would take the brunt of the bumpy tracks, and to not allow it to get back to the milk. A grin spread across CB's stubbled cheeks, and he gave the vehicle more gas. They hurtled ahead and got to the arms just as they settled into position. A sharp crack sounded as they rammed through. To Amphibian Queen's relief, the arm gave way without any major damage to the front bumper. One glance at the slosh meter showed that they hadn't yet made milkshakes. The front tires went onto the tracks. A hole she hadn't seen before jerked one tire down and then spit it back out. Amphibian Queen felt her butt leave the seat, and she let out a gasp as the entire rear end of the truck caught air before crashing back down. Her eyes snapped to the slosh meter, and saw the liquid behind the plastic swinging back and forth like a pendulum. The indicator light burst from a dull, dirty brown to a bright, blazing red. Crack went the other arm. Amphibian Queen swore again. Her head began to pound, and she thought she might throw up. CB kept driving. Bunny Nose led them around another corner just after a colorful sign that read, Billy Bonkas. The driveway led to a light gray building that housed a logo of a chocolate truffle painted on the side. Several men, wearing black body armor and a rather large assortment of weapons, stood near an open bay door. One of them jogged toward the truck. Agent Amphibian Queen reached for her gun. She didn't like strangers that were better armed than her. The man indicated that Bunny Nose should park nearby, while he waved CB to back the truck in. CB complied. Who are these fellas? CB asked as he expertly maneuvered into position. Amphibian Queen studied the body armor, looking for clues. I'm not sure. However, they had the same Kevlar vests as the mercenaries at Social's house. She rolled the window down as one of the men in black approached. The man's dark eyes briefly flicked to CB before they came to rest on her again. Agent Amphibian Queen? He asked. She looked at him, waiting for her knack for remembering faces to kick in. After a second, she shrugged. She'd never seen him before. Too bad. He had nice eyes. And a nice jawline. And he looked great in black. That's me, she said. Ma'am, he nodded in greeting. I have orders to make sure things go smoothly here. What did he mean by smoothly? With the amount of ammo he was packing, she figured his idea of a successful operation would be to have the other guy riddled with holes. May I ask who you are? Amphibian Queen said. The man stepped up to the running board and latched onto the door through the window. Name's Spike, ma'am, with T-O-T-T. She sent an appraising look at him. T-O-T-T, the take out the trash guys? She'd heard of them. Brute force for hire on all your extra dangerous and overly sensitive assignments. Had Social contracted them on top of the SSA? If so, was she that paranoid? Or was there something even bigger going on than they'd been led to believe? The other taut guys moved as CB backed in. 2 men in overalls holding hoses and buckets waited to hook up to the truck. A tall, slim man with a hooked nose and flat dark hair watched as they approached. The tall man's expensive linen business suit made him stick out like a penguin on an ice cab. You're good. Spike smacked the top of the cab twice. CB stopped and threw the truck into park. Time? Amphibian Queen glanced down at her watch. 1 minute to go. Almost to the second. But it didn't matter. They'd sloshed it all up. CB killed the engine. The red indicator light went off. CB swung the door open and dropped to the ground, his cowboy boots hitting the cement with a clunk. Bunnynose walked toward them from where she'd parked the pickup. Amphibian Queen slowly moved her hand to the door, but Spike hopped down and opened it for her. He smiled. Amphibian Queen really liked the way he looked in that armor. Nodding, she swung her legs around and climbed out. Her feet made contact with the ground, and despite her best efforts to remain upright, she took a stumbling step to the side. Spike reached out to steady her. "Thanks," she said. "Stupid airbags." When she saw that she had to look up into Spike's eyes, she smiled. He was just the right height. To her surprise, he said, "You're Peyton Chen." Amphibian Queen swallowed. That was 2 people in one day who'd recognized her from the Olympics. That had never happened before. Yeah?" Spike grinned. "I saw your championship match in Paris a few years back. I couldn't believe you made that shot through the vendor stalls." She felt a blush coming on. Thanks." Not many people knew her from the obstacle course shooting competitions that she liked to enter. It was a tight-knit and highly paranoid community. Spike went on. "I thought your choice of pistol was odd." This guy knew enough about guns to understand the weaknesses of the one she used. Heat crawled up her cheeks, but her geeky love of weapons fought past the embarrassment. Amphibian Queen held up her hand. "I've got long fingers, and even though the aim of the weapon itself takes some getting used to, it fits best in my hand." Was she grinning from ear to ear? How long had that been going on? "That makes sense." Spike shifted from one foot to the other. "I'd love to hear about the competition sometime." Was he asking her out? Or was this professional? Please don't let it be professional. "I'd like that," Agent Amphibian Queen blurted out before she could think it through. Then, all the insecurities from elementary school playground and talking to boys kicked in, and she turned around and bolted toward Bunnynose. Like a game of Chinese checkers, all of the players came together at a single point. The man with the suit and CB stood opposite one another. Amphibian Queen and Bunnynose took the other corners of the arena. Behind her, Amphibian Queen could hear the men in overalls getting the hoses hooked up, and the taut guys took up position around the little circle. Bunnynose raised her eyebrows and looked at Spike. Amphibian Queen ignored her partner and attempted to gather her wits. Her heart was beating almost as fast as it had been when she'd seen that needle. CB, who had apparently already started a conversation with the man in the suit, spoke. "You know just as well as I do that all this happy milk nonsense is crap." His pleasant tone had disappeared, replaced by something a little more insistent. "What you or I believe is irrelevant," the man in the suit said. He sniffed and looked past Amphibian Queen at the truck. "I must record your arrival time, and you are only 1 minute shy of the deadline. The milk will likely be unsuitable for making truffles by the time it is unloaded." "The milk is fine." CB waved his hand in the air, and the keys he held added a tinkling noise to his words. "What with the refrigeration and the drive, we have at least an hour before anyone could test it and say that it was bad, which it's not anyway." "My instructions were very clear," the man insisted. Amphibian Queen exchanged a glance with Bunnynose, who wore a sour expression and looked as if she might get back in the pickup and run the man in the suit over. Amphibian Queen could guarantee that her own face bore a striking resemblance. "I'm sorry, but what is the significance of the timetable?" Amphibian Queen asked. She didn't want to bring up the /o-matic meter just yet. CB, who still waved an infuriated hand at the suited man, turned to her. "The Cloud 9 bovine estate prides itself on the fact that their cows are unaffected by—" He stopped and shook his head. "Well, you've seen the Happy Cow commercials?" He glanced back and forth between the 2 agents. Amphibian Queen shook her head. CB explained. "The Cloud 9 bovine estate prides itself on having the happiest cows in the world. They claim that their milk is better and therefore can be put into more rigorous recipes that lesser milk would curdle under." Bunnynose gave him a flat stare. "Are you serious?" CB put both hands up. "That's their claim." He glanced at the man in the suit. "I say it's all a bunch of BS." The 2 men glared at each other, the icy fury meeting in the middle of their circle and dripping to the ground. Amphibian Queen gestured to where the workers were already pumping the milk from the tank of the truck. She looked at the man in the suit. "So if you believe that, why are you unloading the milk?" The uptight man turned his glare on her. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Bunnynose, she loved to flash her badge, stepped forward. "Precinct 19, Law Enforcement," she said, drawing the shiny piece of metal out of her pocket and shoving it at the man. "Special Agents Bunnynose and Amphibian Queen." She withdrew the badge and gave him her best impress me stare, And you are? The man had the decency to swallow and adjust his tie. T-Ruffle, I own and operate Billy Bonka's. Amphibian Queen gave her head a little shake. This guy owned a chocolate factory called Billy Bonka's. She thought, at the very least, that he should have a purple suit jacket, or rainbow shoes with toes that curled up like elves. Or that his face should show even the slightest hint of him having smiled once or twice in his life. Bunnynose nodded. So if the milk is spoiled, so to speak, then why are you unloading it? T-Ruffle sniffed again and broke his gaze with Bunnynose. Social is a dear friend. I'm willing to test the milk as soon as it gets inside to see if it is suitable. I would be devastated to be the one to ruin her party. His tone, and the continued glares at the group, made it very clear who he thought the blame should fall on. He turned to CB. I'm surprised you're mixed up in all of this. CB shrugged. I was in the neighborhood when these ladies needed a hand. He smiled at Bunnynose, who was looking between the men with hoses and the guys with guns. Thought I would help out, and I figured we'd end up here. Amphibian Queen took a breath. Do you mind if we go inside? I could use a glass of water. Between having crashed the SUV, the harrowing ride here, being met by armed-to-the-teeth guards, and Social's insistence that someone wanted to sabotage the chocolates, Amphibian Queen was feeling a little exposed. Of course. T-Ruffle nodded stiffly and turned on his heels. Follow me. Amphibian Queen moved to the front of the line, partially so she could be the first inside, and partially so CB would have the chance to get shot down by Bunnynose. It would be easier on him if he got it over with quickly. They didn't go in through the bay door, even though Amphibian Queen could clearly see a break room with huge windows just inside. Instead, the man led them to the front door of the office area. He held it open for Amphibian Queen, who smiled and nodded her thanks as she entered. The opulent lobby made the man's expensive suit look shabby. Elegant furniture, rich carpet, deep colors, and crystal chandeliers gave the place a spot of honor in her heart. Amphibian Queen loved beauty. It was the artist in her, and this place had obviously been designed by someone who knew what they were doing. Past the sitting area, which rivaled most 6-star hotels she'd been in, a long, hand-carved wood display case took up the entire far wall. Inside, she could see tiny displays of chocolates on plates, in cups, some stacked neatly and a few not so neatly. One sniff and the sweet tang of cocoa and vanilla drifted up her nose and settled on her tongue, causing her mouth to water. She probably should have eaten something earlier. While the chocolates were tempting, she needed a drink. She spotted the spigot of a water cooler in the corner, surrounded by yet another beautiful cabinet. Above the spigot, a row of crystal wine glasses sat, ready for use. Coughing, still trying to get the powder from the airbag out of her lungs, she walked forward, savoring the feeling of the thick carpet beneath her shoes, and reached for a glass. Before T-Ruffle could offer or object, she plucked one off the shelf and filled it with cool, crisp, wet water. She hadn't realized just how thirsty she was until it touched her lips. A contented sigh escaped as she drank. Not as good as a hilly dew, but it worked. Bunnynose spoke to T-Ruffle. Do you mind if I use your ladies' room? T-Ruffle grunted in acceptance, and Bunnynose headed down the closest hall. Knowing Bunnynose was off to explore, Amphibian Queen finished her water and set the glass down on a silver tray. She rearranged her expression back into wonder mode and turned to face T-Ruffle. This is beautiful, she said, glancing around. You must have some very impressive products. She went on before he could answer, moving toward the display. A giant clamshell occupied the center spot, and within the shell, sitting on a tongue-shaped pillow, a pearly white chocolate nestled down as if taking a nap. Is that the clam truffle? Placing her nose just inches from the glass, she stared and pointed. It is, T-Ruffle joined her. You are very good to have noticed. A friend of mine is a bit of a self-made chocolatier, she waved her hand. Nothing like this, mind you. He dabbles, but this is one of his favorites. CB stayed on the other side of the room, looking bored. What would you say is your most unique product? What do people come here for instead of going anywhere else? At that, T-Ruffle's skinny chest puffed out, as he pulled his scarecrow frame a little straighter. We are best known for our exotic truffles. He pointed at the far end of the case, where single chocolates sat on hand-blown glass plates. We make the standard flavors, but we also have a whole line of exotic fish truffles, smoked truffles, barbecue truffles, and the almost-too-good-to-be-true truffles. This is what we are providing for Social. As if on cue, his phone rang, emitting an old-fashioned bring. Yes, he answered without preamble. A muffled voice from the other end said a few words. Very good, T-Ruffle said. Then he hung up and turned to Amphibian Queen. It looks as if the milk is still acceptable. Wonderful! From the far corner, she heard CB say something that sounded suspiciously like, "It's a bunch of BS." Her song for the week blurted out of her phone, and Amphibian Queen dragged it from her pocket. She hadn't been expecting Bunny Nose to call. Hello? Bunny Nose's voice sounded hurried. Hey, I think you'd better come take a look at... The sharp crack of a gun being fired indoors interrupted her partner. What was that? Amphibian Queen demanded. Bunny Nose cursed. It looks like I have a bad guy back here.